We're talking today about church growth and in a modern format. And the reason for this is because there are a lot of opportunities that we have today, and all I want to do is try to help encourage the use of it and maybe give some pointers that most of you probably know all these things already. You may already be doing these things, but at the very least we can all see that we're trying and we can work together on some ideas. And if you're not doing any of these things, then I want to encourage you to think about some of these, because it's pretty important nowadays. Things have definitely changed, and they're going to continue changing. This internet thing is not a fad. It's here to stay. And it can also have an impact on people spiritually. And being a preacher and working with the Truth and Love, that's what I'm focusing in on. In fact, every day I'm thinking about how we can reach more people in the digital world, because there's only so much I can do with the physical world. I'm trying my best to get into different markets and things, but even that, the number of people watching television is decreasing slowly. And it's not going to be too many years away, it looks like, that before we have to start thinking about, well, is it even worth it to be on television? And when we get to that point, we don't want to start then thinking about, okay, what's the future? We want to start thinking about it now, and we can do both at one time, which is a really neat deal. But in thinking about that, I decided, you know what, it might be good to encourage congregations and people to use what we have, to use what's available, and to put it into practice to help the congregations grow themselves. And when I sat down with the elders at Brown Trail thinking about what I'm doing, the Truth and Love, one of the things that we talked about was this idea that we wanted to be a service to other people. And I've kind of developed that even more. They've given me a lot of leeway to be able to develop those ideas. And I've come up with the kind of a slogan that we help churches, and that's kind of what we do. We help churches grow. That's the whole reason we have the television program to begin with, the whole reason we promoted it. It wasn't just so we could have a man's face on a television screen. It was so that we could help people. And I'm trying to capture that and make sure that we continue with that idea. So we're going to talk today about using modern technology to promote the principles of growth. And it's going to be a little bit longer than normal, but we'll have some breaks in there. And I don't see a clock, so that's actually good for me. I can just go until I'm done. But why even talk about this? I already talked a little bit about that, but as of last night, there were 1.4 billion active Facebook users. Now, that's the active one. And these are statistics I got from Google. And, of course, Google is always right. Not really. But they have a neat little page, a statistics page, where they count all kinds of different things. They count Facebook, Google+, Twitter, a lot of different ones. And they even have things like how many cell phones were sold today, how many cell phones were sold this year, things like this. That's where I got a lot of the information. And you can see it running constantly. It's pretty amazing what you saw. They even have one that said how many websites were hacked today. And you can see the number just ticking slowly up. It's a couple of seconds, a couple every second. And that's kind of scary. But at the same time, the number of websites out there is so huge. I don't know. I guess people just don't really take passwords seriously if you can hack in that easily. But anyway, Facebook is huge. 1.4 billion people. And that number is growing constantly, the people that are actively using Facebook. And most of the people that use Facebook use it almost daily. So there's a lot of information being passed around. Last month, news came out that more people go to Facebook for news than they do when they go to Google. They don't Google it anymore. They go to Facebook and find in their news feed links to documents, and that's how they get their news. So there are a lot of people, growing number of people, that don't watch news on television. They don't get it in a newspaper. They get it from Facebook. And that's good and bad. There's some good stuff on there, but at the same time, it's going to be extremely biased, slanted toward your circle of friends and what they happen to like and what some of the things that you happen to see. And so there's some problems there, but it is interesting. That really wasn't heralded. Nobody said a whole lot about it, but I think it's extremely significant change because Google just gives you the facts. You go on to Google, you can search, and it'll give you basically everything that's written on a particular subject. You can't do that on Facebook. You have to just scroll until you find something. And you can do a little bit of search, but it's pretty limited. This year, 2.3 trillion YouTube videos have been watched so far. That's just mind-boggling. It takes 10 seconds to reach 1 million views. Every 10 seconds, 1 million videos are watched. How many were watched from this congregation? I don't say that in a mean way. I'm just saying we ought to be able to tap into some of that. Now there's a lot of that because people are putting up so many. There's 1 million a minute that's actually posted onto YouTube, and the idea of that is just mind-boggling to me. And this, of course, is all over the world in all kinds of different languages, but there's certainly a lot there. So far, there's 652 billion gigabytes of internet traffic this year, and I deal with data all the time. I deal with gigabytes, and they're large. You could do a lot of things with 1 gigabyte, and there's 652 billion so far. There's 58 billion pictures uploaded, and I imagine that a lot of you guys are guilty of putting some of those pictures up there. Then we have a million blog posts that have been, 1 billion blog posts that have been written this year. And people wonder why they can't get people to read their blogs. Very many. It used to be when you had 30 people writing a blog, everyone would see it, but you got 1 billion people to compete with now. 55 trillion emails have been sent out this year. That's just amazing to me. People were talking about, earlier this year, I read some articles that people were saying that email's dead. Far from it. And in fact, they're actually seeing a revival of even more people using email. Then they kind of went through a period of people were discontent and they didn't like it because they had so much junk in their email folders. But now things have gotten actually better because the software is a lot more intelligent. It can sort the things and tell you what the junk is and throw it out. And at least mine does that. I love it. So far this year, how many articles and emails has the church sent out? You think we can tap into some of these numbers, these huge numbers? I will never be able to compete or have people view that many things. But imagine if you could. Imagine if you could have 0.1% of the traffic that's out there, that people viewing your emails or viewing lessons from this congregation or articles that are being sent out. What could we do to the world around us? We could impact. Now I realize also that and I'm going to talk about this too in context here, but I realize that a lot of this we're dealing with globally. And so, in fact, everything I've talked about so far is globally. There's a certain number of us, sometimes we get a little frustrated with that idea. We don't want to think that, I don't really want to worry about spending my time teaching someone in Sri Lanka the gospel because I'll never see them. And I understand that to a degree, but there's growing ability that we have to reach people directly in our community. One of the most searched phrases in Google is the phrase "near me," and I use it all the time. I'd say McDonald's near me, or I did it 2 or 3 times yesterday, and more people are doing that. Google they're realizing that people want to see local things, and they're starting to, when you do search, they're starting to put in their algorithms, taking into account location, which they've never really done before. And now they're starting to present things that are more and more local. I've seen some evidence that Facebook is playing around with the idea as well of having local groups and things like this. And right now you can really have some things already. If you do a little bit of legwork, you can get some things going that way. But imagine if you could wake up in the morning and go up to your computer and you check your email and you see a list of people that have overnight or from the previous week have sent you a request for a Bible study. Then you sit down and you read through the list and you see what level they're on, and you already have some files on your system, and so you simply attach the file and send it off to them, and they study the Bible that way. We used to do that with World Video Bible School, we still do it to a great extent. We'd send mail around the world. You remember what do we call that? The correspondence courses. We had a certain name for it earlier. But anyway, we know how that kind of thing works. And it would be wonderful if we could do that digitally. We could do that. It would be very easy. We have easy access. We don't have to wait for 3 weeks for the mail to arrive in Africa. We could just actually have Bible studies. And you also can avoid even the interaction, though I wouldn't recommend it. You can set things up on autopilot, so when people respond to a certain message, they automatically get another lesson, and they can just study the Bible on their own. There's so many things that are available out there for us. So it's one of the reasons that I'm talking about this. I also wanted to kind of defend a little bit about social media. I know there's some pretty bad problems with the internet, pretty bad problems with social media, and there's always going to be that. But it also has kind of gotten a bad rap on some things. Isolation is not as common as people state. In fact, there's some statistics that are pretty interesting as I went through it. I didn't have everything. I don't have everything written down here, but social networking sites are increasingly used to keep up with close social ties. Have y'all noticed that? I have more friends now than I've ever had. And most of the friends that I have are actually on Facebook. I haven't even met them in person. But we interact and we have conversations and things like this. The average user of social networking site has more close ties and is half as likely to be socially isolated as the average American. Now that's an interesting concept, because I'd always heard that if you're on Facebook and social media, then you're isolating yourself from the real world and you're not interacting with people. But studies have now come out showing that that's not true. There are ties. Now, just because I don't see someone physically doesn't mean that I can't have a relationship with them, does it? And we used to have telephone conversations, but we don't do that anymore. At least I don't. If people call me and I'm not really, if I'm a little bit busy, sometimes I won't even take the call. I'll just let it go to voicemail. Or actually, what I hope they would do is hang up and text me, because that's what I use. If they want to get a hold of me the best way, that's what you do. You text me. Facebook users are more trusting than others, than those who are not using social media. Facebook users have more close relationships than those not using social media. Now, these are a little surprising to me, and it may be a little slanted in their views, but it is interesting that people are starting to use social media to interact and to have friendships online. And Facebook has done a lot. They've done a lot of things that I scratch my head and say, why in the world would they do that? But there's other things that they've done. I think this is a wonderful addition. Internet users get more support from their social ties, and Facebook users actually get the most support. So we're talking about emotional support that people get. Every day almost, there's someone asking me for prayers. There's someone sending me a private message saying that they're going to have surgery, or I shouldn't say every day, at least once a week. I'm seeing this kind of things. Are you seeing this? People are asking for these, and they're getting a lot of support. We have many opportunities. This is an example of just recently somebody sent me a message, said, I truly enjoy your posts, so it's so inspiring to see faith on Facebook. Keep the posts coming. It does reach people. Stay in touch. That's an example. Not everyone is going to respond and tell you those kinds of things, but it was neat to be able to be in touch with people and try to offer some help. We have lots of requests for prayers. I've already said. I've shared hundreds of articles with hundreds of people over the last few years, and it may be probably actually in the thousands, but we've all done it. I've written quite a few, and I've just shared a lot that I've read, and I thought this is good. And just because you have a lot of friends doesn't mean that all of your friends see everything that you have, that you share, but you get a significant portion of them, especially if you interact a lot. The Truth and Love reaches thousands of people all over the world, and I'm really happy to see the numbers. We can kind of see a map, and it's lit up all over mainly because of the interaction that we have from Facebook, and that's mainly it right there from Facebook. We have some from email, and some on the internet. We're on the internet, of course, and some people just stumble upon the site, but that's a lot more rare. But the problem is that the rules change frequently, and there are methods that work better than others, and those tend to change. So you have to kind of stay on top of things to see what's working and what's not working. And it can be a little bit burdensome to do that, especially if you don't really know where to look or I have sources that I go to constantly. I'm getting emails from, hey, this works, this doesn't work. And usually I found that the best place to go to find out what's working on Facebook is marketers, because they're working Facebook to try to make sales. And when they figure out something that works, I start paying attention. And not that we're trying to make sales, but we're trying to reach people. And they're figuring out how to reach people. And we're going to do it in a way that's not going to be as salesy as they're going to do, but we can still learn some principles. But actually, the best method of all is something that you can easily do every day. The best way for you to reach your friends and to have an impact on the social media, and that's really what we're going to talk about today, is what we're going to cover. And if you want to sum it up, it's really going to be about relationships. That's the best way to market the church, so to speak. And in actuality, that's the best way it's always been, isn't it? Things haven't changed. There's periods of time when the internet is such a strange and kind of out there philosophy, especially when it was first introduced, that it kind of had its own culture, and you had to do things in a certain way. But that has gradually changed and morphed into more and more of, or maybe we've changed also to meet it. But it's had to change and adapt to what humans do. And what we do is we interact, and the way that we have the most information shared is through the relationships that we have. We build trust with each other, we build relationships, and that's exactly what we're seeing online. We can do the exact same things. It's just we may not be able to see them personally, face to face. And the good news is that the same old principles apply. So what I'm sharing with you this morning is nothing new. There may be some new applications, but the principles are going to be the same. It's going to be very recognizable, and that's one of the reasons I'm so happy that you're here anyway, because you probably know that there's nothing that's new under the sun. And it's very good, actually, that we can look at the same principles we've always used and still be able to make an impact. We don't have to learn completely how to redo life.